I am Alejandro.
I'm Mordecai.
I'm Chrissy.
And we're
you there.
Oh, beautiful. That was nice. Immaculate.
So last time we were talking about the crisis cycle.
Yeah.
We were talking about how, like, the people that we work with, us, literally everybody has experienced crisis, and there's a way to flow through that, and then how to support people with that with a crisis safety plan, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And all throughout our last episode, I was pretty much dropping, oh, we'll be talking about that next episode. Oh, we'll be talking about that. Same for everybody else at this table.
We're finally getting there.
We are.
Yeah.
We're here. And so today we're going to be talking about wellness and self-care and self-love, all that good. So I just want to open it up to the table. How would y'all define wellness, or what does wellness look like to you?
Wellness. You know, before I ever got into like peer support work, I guess I would have defined wellness as just like feeling like not being sick, just feeling good, just the general, right? That's wellness.
Health is wealth.
Now, how I look at wellness is honestly, I really look at it as when I am able to feel love from myself and feel that all the parts of me, whether or not they're getting like fully met, but I'm aware of them and I'm doing things to work toward goals and visions in these different parts of myself, which we'll talk about.
So a bit more of like a holistic lens and how it connects to your place and time right now and going forward. Okay.
It's like a whole body, holistic. Yeah.
Cool.
For me, it would be kind of like a mindset. Wellness is if I need a sense of purpose or direction. If I don't have that, then I am physically and mentally unwell. I'm stagnant, right? So I need a sense of not necessarily that I belong, but a sense of I'm going somewhere that means something to me. It can also cause a lot of conflict with just that rapid change, and I'm realizing that I need to do this now, and whatever everyone thought before can also agree or not agree, but we'll get into that later with boundaries and
all those things,
all that self-care stuff. But for me, it is a sense of purpose and a direction forward.
Love that.
Yeah, I love that you said that was like a mindset too, because like that is a part of it when you're moving into being more well, however you define that. It is a huge part of that is the mindset of how do I become more well?
Yeah. How do?
Well, there is a definition. So, you know, we like to share what or actually, Mark, I apologize. Did you want to share your idea?
No.
Okay. Totally okay. Respect.
that.
We're very inclusive on this podcast. So a definition from SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse Mental Health. What is that last S? I always forget. Supports Association. Look it up out there. But it's awesome. If you're in peer support, you definitely want to get familiar with SAMHSA. It's SAMHSA. So their definition of wellness is, and I really love this, it's not as the absence of disease, illness, or stress, but the presence of purpose in life. Love that. Active involvement in satisfying work and play, joyful relationships, healthy body, and healthy living environment, and happiness.
I love this definition because I have some friends who are chronically ill, or have chronic pain, encounter a lot of stressful circumstances in their life. And this kind of like definition says that wellness is still obtainable for you. Like you are not excluded from this because of X, Y, Z, that this is still for you.
And I think that's really important to just remind ourselves, just as a whole, as like a collective of human beings, wellness is always attainable, no matter what. Whether we're going through a really negative part of our life or a super positive part of our life, that wellness is always going to be attainable.
Absolutely.
And I want to say, even if it's not just a super negative time in their life, even if it's just like a really busy time in their life, like,
yeah, preach that one.
You know, but, yeah, we will get into that because that kind of ties into like balance and how important that is.
Yeah, which is like, you know, when you think about wellness, it's kind of one of those beautiful words that can, it's almost like a down comforter on everything, a big old blankie. But there are ways that we can kind of assess or think about parts of our wellness, right? So today we're going to share with you all what are the 8 dimensions of wellness, okay? And I guess each of us will kind of like talk about what they are and how we can maybe practice self-love and self-care to expand in those areas. Mm-hmm. So just to share the 8 dimensions, we have physical wellness, right? That's going to be like our physical body. Emotional wellness, intellectual wellness, financial wellness, which we're going to get into talking about, social wellness, spiritual wellness, our environmental wellness, and then we also have that 8th one is our occupational wellness.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to start with the beginning of that list with physical wellness and just kind of briefly share a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So this, right, it pertains to our physical bodies. So there's a lot of, with all of these, I think it's important to be asking ourselves questions. And the most important one being, what does physical wellness mean to me?
Right.
Or what does emotional wellness mean to me? Because your definition of wellness might very well be different than what society asks of you. And so for you, physically, it's important that you are practicing safe sex boundaries. It's important for you to be having a certain number of sleep, like hours of sleep at night. What about the content of the food that you eat? Or, you know, maybe even making sure that you eat one meal a day if that's something you struggle with, right? So like, what does that look like for you? Any other thoughts on like what else would go into the physical aspect? Movement, I suppose.
Yeah, movement. You know, appreciating your body. Mm-hmm. I love what you said that this is to the individual.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like health and like what is good. It's like it's your body basically that you're living in, and you know when it's optimized, like when you feel the best, you're waking up, you feel good, you're walking, you're doing this, like whatever it might be that works for you. I do think that individualistic side is really important because in my own personal experience, I felt like, you know, there's been times where like going to the doctor, for example, it's like, this is the way it's supposed to be. And if you don't fit into that box, you can get that stigma of just being seen as someone who's, you know, unhealthy or disgustingly unhealthy sometimes is how I felt with doctors. And so I like looking at the wellness from that individualistic purview of like, it's when do I feel healthy in that section?
I have the ability to say when I'm feeling good. Nothing can really tell me. The Wii Fit really destroyed me on like my physical well-being because it was just like, hey man, you're really out of shape, and I was like, you're a video game, so I'm not gonna play. Like I don't have to listen to you anymore.
Well, now with AI, it's gonna start to be like, hey, move it.
Yeah, I mean that's our Apple Watch in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's like breathe, stand. But it's those things that kind of help us to keep in mind that we have to be physically well, right? Mm-hmm. Or to have that mindset to keep in check of, am I keeping my physicality up to my standard?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I have a background with like eating disorder stuff. And so a therapist shared once with me about not to think about the like food that you're eating and like the macros and the calories and all that stuff, right? But really like when you're done eating something, like how do you actually feel from it, and let that drive your decisions going 100%. Forward. Mm-hmm. Like letting your body, tuning into your body, let that communicate things for you. And that was really helpful.
Absolutely. Okay, next in our list, as we just kind of go through and give you all a little bit. So emotional wellness, I feel like I love this. So this is like when we have like healthy outlets to relieve stress, right? Recognizing that all of our emotions are valid and they come and go as they please and as circumstances happen. So do we have a place, right? And remembering to ask yourself, even like Mordecai said in the beginning, like what is emotional, when you even hear that and you hear emotional wellness, what does that mean to you? What would that look like, you know, if it was happening the best? What might that look like and feel like for you? It's also having good self-esteem and having good boundaries.
Yeah, I think for me, I notice with emotional wellness, like when I'm feeling secure and like my anxiety is lower and I'm able to make better, clear-headed decisions and show up for people and hold space for them and respect my own needs for space, like that is emotional wellness for me, right? But everybody is different. Alondra, did you have any thoughts on like what that was like for you?
I do, mainly because I have a real life example. So I am quitting nicotine. So that goes for my physical health, and that is why I did it. I didn't feel great, so I quit nicotine.
Right.
However, that stunted my dopamine. Like I was a short fuse for so very long, and my emotional wellness was in the tank. Even though I was taking steps to like make myself feel better, I was not emotionally feeling better. So I had to rely not necessarily on myself, because there was no way I was doing it. It's slowly but surely. I had to rely on the people around me to help boost me up in my emotions. And I needed that support and validity and like fighting my disempowering beliefs of I can't do this. This sucks. Yeah, it sucks for sure. But like it's going to be better with the people that are around me and the way that I've been supported. So it doesn't necessarily have to be you are the sole purpose of making yourself well. It can be anyone around you can help you do this as well.
Yes. Way to bring back that community. And I'm glad that you have folks around you that really care about you and want to see you.
Yeah, I honestly would not have done it without them, quite honestly.
I mean, like, so what you said about like kind of leaning on your people, I think that's so important because I see this in a lot of folks where we think that like we can't lean on other people.
Yeah.
We don't want to burden them, or maybe we only have like one really close person in our life where we feel like we can do that. But like what I try to teach to other people is that we got to think about our community as like a safety net. You know, do you want one rope in your safety net? Like that ain't gonna catch you when you're falling off that cliff. You know, you need.
It could be a strong rope, but
it could be.
But it's still just that one.
What's it tied to?
Right. Totally. Yes. So I think that's so important to have that piece to help like wrap around you.
Yeah.
And I heard too what you said about how you made this beautiful choice to take care of your physical wellness, and then it directly affected your emotional wellness.
Yeah.
So it shows like how these are so like interconnected.
I feel like if you, in this example, it's like you're going to be boosting that physical, but also I feel like it points out like, okay, I'm going to have some intention when it comes to my emotions, right? I need to come at this. And you can kind of only do that by taking those chances and making those moves. And that's why they're ever changing. Yeah. And I think it's important to say too, you know, as you guys go, as the listeners, you all go and take a look at some of the resources we have for you. There is an activity where we kind of, I guess you could say, measure like our satisfaction in these different dimensions. And we almost, every training or anytime we speak about it, we like to just remind like very rare is someone walking around like fully satisfied and like
no one's maxed out level 99.
You know, all dimensions. They're just like, I'm beaming. You know?
I was just telling Alejandra this, that like I've never met a single person who's like balanced.
No.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that? We can all strive for it, right? But like the reality is that we're human.
And if you are, please send us an email. I want to know your secrets.
Yeah. Well, if they are, they're probably superhuman or an alien. So
there's going to be a huge paywall before you can get there.
Honestly, charge for that.
Yes.
Okay. So our next one is intellectual.
I got this.
Okay.
I think intellectual goes past just being book smart or street smart. It's your ability to think outside of the box. It's your creative aspect. It is your, like, how else can this work? How else can this be? I can see this one thing right in front of me. For the listeners, it's just a giant soundboard. There's so many buttons on it. The intellect in me is kind of just like, playing with every button to see what happens because I want to know.
Right.
And it's that sense of curiosity is how I look at it. So that to me is, as long as I remain curious, I will remain intellectually well.
Right. So some like questions that you might want to ask yourself around this is like, how am I putting myself into another person's point of view, to expand my own worldview? What are things that I'm doing to maybe solve problems in my world? How am I being creative? Those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm really passionate about the intellectual one because, you know, for me personally, don't have like a book, like you said, book smart, physical degree. But I find that like, so intellectual for me, right? It's like I enjoy learning as much as possible. So maybe I'm not learning in this classroom setting, but I love finding ways, reading YouTubes. I love I'm trying to teach myself how to read hieroglyphs. Like it's finding ways to challenge yourself, I think is a really good way to like, in what ways, right? And so like I think about my mom, for example. My mom always does like all these really crazy hard Sudokus. But see, she's challenged herself. Yeah. So there's ways, right? And I feel like sometimes if we show this to youth or to others, you might go right there and just trust. It's not just that. It's not just that book smart.
Yeah. So the next one is financial wellness. So, and this is, as much as like a degree of our life, this is also a skill, I will say.
Yeah.
Right. So it pertains to us using our money responsibly, perhaps building up a savings if we have the ability to do so, and being satisfied with where we are in our current financial place and setting ourselves up for success for the future as well.
I would say with finances, in like not a money aspect, but pay yourself, right? And that can be anywhere from, I mean, it involves money, but like giving yourself a gift or just like budgeting for that time. It doesn't have to be around like money. It can also be just like, how am I budgeting everything in my life?
Right.
And how am I putting things aside that I can enjoy for myself, or how can I put things aside so that I can eventually do things with the people that I love?
Right. I think we should also talk a little bit about, you know, again, just thinking about to some of the activities we've done with this, you know, the realities of right now we're talking about these dimensions, but when I think about financial and how you were telling the story about this nicotine and then your emotional, it's like there is an emotional connection and feeling when your financial current goals, perhaps maybe you're not like meeting everything that you expect of yourself. And I think it's important to kind of just speak from the heart and say that like it's hard to, you know, it's not an easy thing to do. And so it's like if you're finding that well, of course, I'd love to be financially settled, or I'd love to know how to budget better, etc. Look at that as a challenge, and that'll help your intellectual, right? Look at that as a goal that, okay, I know that's what I want. So how can I get there? And it's like last episode, we talked about plans fail, people don't. So tying that into, as you're looking at all these different areas, if you're feeling like, well, man, I'm listening to them talk and I feel pretty low in all of them, you know, normalizing that and saying like, okay, that's a jumping spot for you. It's a place to say, what would my goals look like here? What would I want to see be different? Even if it's feeling like, man, I feel a little bit lower in there. That's why talking about this is so important, because a blanket statement of wellness is just that. But when you actually take a second and you're looking at where does this specific category show up in my life? And how can I really grow this? That's where like I feel like the movement happens.
With the ones that, because I actually went through this with me for quitting nicotine, and I knew that emotional would be stunted at first, but it'll eventually get back to where it needed to be. And it was like, I don't need to rely on this to feel at baseline. I should be able to do that regularly. So that was how that played into that. I also wanted to feel physically well and not hit a vape right when I woke up because I was rushing for a head rush, but also the financial aspect of it. I'm saving like $200 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
How interesting. Way to put that to apply to all of these. I love that.
Yeah. One thing that I want to say too about the financial is thinking about like what, so an activity that I kind of lead people through separately is to think about like what gives you energy, what drains you. And so to use it in this same like circumstance with identifying our financial wellness, what are the things that are maybe that maybe you want to avoid, things that are going to be making you less financially well,
right?
And what are the things that will be moving you towards being more financially well, and like kind of breaking things down in that aspect.
I really appreciate that because in my current life, it's like I've been kind of faced with challenges of like, you know, wanting to go out because that's like where I'm seeing my friends, but it's like that's costing me money, and you know, sometimes there's alcohol and that can be draining for the next day, etc. And it's like recently I had got to do a text therapist thing, and they were asking me, it's like, what do you enjoy about it? What are you getting out of it, right? And so I'm like, well, I love that, like, I'm being seen. I love that I'm welcomed. I love like the community aspect. So they were kind of just saying like, okay, those are awesome things to love. You know, they fall into all these dimensions of wellness. What are ways that you can get those needs met that aren't centered perhaps in a pub setting or perhaps in a place where you're going to have to spend money? So I really liked it because it had me thinking, yeah, all of those things are very important that I'm loving. And I can still have that conversation with myself to say, well, these other things that are impacting our physical and they're impacting our financial, let's find alternative routes to still make this happen for ourselves. So that's been my current like movement, self-discussion.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That makes me think of, I think in the very first episode, I had mentioned something about how like all behaviors stem from unmet needs, right?
Right.
And so when we look at each one of these dimensions of wellness, what are the needs that we're trying to meet in each one of these? And maybe that can help us guide how we go about
I love that.
filling that cup.
I love that. I'm writing it down.
Heck yeah.
Write that down.
So the next one we have is social. So this is technically social, but it's filling that cup for feeling our community, connecting with others, feeling less alone, and building our support network, our support system.
For me, this one is a tough one because I love being social. However, it is hard for me to be social when I'm putting too many things in everyone's cup. So I'm trying to appease everyone, and therefore I'm taking away from myself in order for everyone else to feel like they're well and secure. So it's, while that I would rate it high because I care a lot about the people that I'm around and I'm in contact with, even actually whether I know you or not, I want you to feel as comfortable or well as possible when you're in my presence, or how can I get you there? But that also takes away from me. So wellness can be both interpersonal and then also exterior as well.
Oh, 100% it is. Yeah.
So within and without, like within ourselves and outside of ourselves.
Yeah, because when I listen to what you just said, I hear that like, okay, you love being around folks, but there's correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a slight toll because you're more concerned about how's everybody's vibe, you know, and how am I making that vibe? So that can be like a little bit to balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then again, it's finding that balance that is so hard.
Yeah.
You know, I found that for social interactions that I tend to prefer like the one-on-one because I often fall into that camp of like, oh, I just want to be like a good host. I want to make sure that everybody's taken care of, and like, how can I make sure that everybody's, you know, feeling good in this space? And that often leaves me feeling like I'm mirroring all these different energies of everyone that's in front of me, and I'm not really actually being my most authentic self because I'm trying to make sure that everybody else is okay and like taken care of. Is that trauma or is that
yeah, you know?
Like, you know, but whatever.
Yeah.
So
it's like the king chameleon where like I'm here to blend in and I can fit in anywhere, but afterwards I'm so drained.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, thinking about social wellness, you know, now that things have become somewhat, you know, back to we're able to go to concerts and all, et cetera. the social experience is completely different. Pre-pandemic, I was super duper social butterfly, and I'm kind of happy to report I'm coming back to that. But it took some time because it was like my social skills were lagging. It was really tough after just being inside. You kind of get comfortable to being inside. So I think a big part of the social part is kind of like what you said, that one-on-one is totally okay. But it's like, do you have meaningful people or meaningful relationships in your life? You know, and I have a very dear person in my life right now who is going through a really bad bout of depression and genuinely feels like they don't have any friends. And it's a very realistic feeling. It's a very realistic thought. And so when I'm kind of helping them as a friend, not as a peer, but as a friend, I think about this wellness because I'm like, well, if somehow I could inspire them to get outside for that physical activity and connect emotionally with somebody, right? And feel like they could challenge themselves intellectually. It's socially, if I can get them out, it's going to help build that. And these other things will build with it, right? Which will help that wellness, which can help that depression. And so just even thinking about this, that social aspect, I think it's more so feeling that you have someone in your corner, someone who cares and will talk to you.
I think that's definitely more about the quality than the quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, we're not saying have 500 friends. No.
Yeah, because sometimes the more that is, the less quality. Yeah, the less
You could have
true
500
friendship.
homies that know nothing about you, or 5 friends that know everything.
Yeah, exactly. So next in our dimensions of wellness, we have spiritual. So this is a beautiful one. Now I will name or say, I've had different classes that we've done this, and folks have said spiritual. It's just not my vibe. It's not my word, and we respect that. So if anything, you know, doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right for you, always remember that this is your wellness. This is your plan. This is your life. You have the freedom. But for today, the spiritual kind of side, for me personally, it's like when I feel spiritually fed, I just feel like it's not a religious thing for me. It is so much more. It is like feeling connected to nature. It is feeling at one. Like there's times where I feel like my body is over there and I'm over here, and I don't like it. I want to be calibrated and together. And so it's like I feel like I'm committed to myself, and that feels like a big part of a spiritual wellness.
I look at spiritual as like your opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
It is.
I love that.
That's how
love
I
it.
I changed the word spiritual to growth, and that's just because it's my ability to be grounded and then see how I can grow up from here.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
I definitely see the spiritual illness as how connected I am to myself, which does go hand in hand with the growth, because it is about how do I feel in relation to my other relationships, in relation to my connection to the world, my purpose in this world. How connected am I feeling to all of this, with me being at the center of this? So, yeah.
I love that.
A little bit of both of y'all's.
I know. It's
all
perfect.
one thing.
And so, I want to say too that for people who maybe are have like a specific spiritual practice or religious practice, I think that would also go under here too. If that gives you life to engage in those ways, like that would be also.
What is your sense of
included in
purpose?
this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that.
So environmental is 7. That's where we're at. So yeah, environmental, and that's just it's more than just I care about the environment, but what is around me. Am I feeling safe and secure in where I'm at now? Are the things around me and the people around me supporting me in a way that is enhancing me, really? And it doesn't even, like, the whole purpose of people is not to just enhance you, but, like, are they providing a sense of promoting purpose for me?
Right.
Are they able to support me in a way that I feel seen, heard, and valued, and also supported? Are they promoting me to be the best version of me? And the things around me as well, like the media that I consume, the environment that I'm in, is the place that I'm living also doing that? Do I have opportunity to grow and be around things that are meaningful to me? And that's what environment is for me.
I so appreciate that you even mentioned like what your environment is in your virtual spaces.
Yeah.
Because like that is so important. I remember when I was like at my most depressed, like what my Tumblr feed looked like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Doom scrolling has gotten
Doom
me.
scrolling is so real.
And the internet is it's the Wild West now. It is a whole new landscape. And if it's treated as an environment, it's going to be cared for as an environment.
It's facts, yeah.
So in what ways are you surrounding yourself with people, places, settings that make you feel safe?
Yes.
That fuel your growth, that tend to your, self-care, your wellness, your ever becoming. What are some other questions that maybe people could be asking themselves with environmental wellness?
For me, what we just started buying art for our house because we had really barren walls.
Yeah.
It's just white walls, and it seemed we walked in and it seemed just sad. It was just barren in the house. We have like a cardboard cutout of a fire in our fireplace because we're not allowed to use it. And it's just like the saddest thing. It's funny when we walk in, but it's just like that's all we got. So we have like a little reading nook, and it's just filled to the brim with plants. And then we have just random art things in our house. Like we have Bolden Brash from SpongeBob, Squidward's painting just right on one of our walls. It's just a lot of cool things of how can I find joy in the things that I look at in my immediate environment or in the place that I'm at the most that bring me joy. For my roommates, they love anime. We got One Piece all throughout our living room. For me, I love Legos. I have a replica of The Office for the Legos, and that brings me joy. So it's these things that just remind me to bring me back to center and like give me a smile on my face so that I can be like, heck yeah, this is cool.
I love that. So I hear a lot of like sensory things. Like what are you seeing in your home that makes you feel good? What are the things that maybe you're smelling? What are the textures that feel good? Things that remind you of maybe special moments or interests that you have.
Absolutely.
Our fridge is just family photos, and it's just like from like before we knew each other. From like, I think there's a soccer photo from when one of them was like 8, and then there's every music festival that we've been to. But it's like the highlight reels of our friendship that has to get posted on the thing that we all share, which is the fridge.
Yeah,
and it just brings me joy every time I look at it.
That's so cute.
That is cute.
The only thing that I want to say maybe here is that you could take it a step further and to think about like environmental wellness as far as like the broader scale of things. If that is an interest that you have, like how are you helping to take care of this earth and reduce our impact and footprint?
Yes.
Kind of thing.
That makes me think so hard about positive youth development. This is our last episode, but be sure to check us out for more stuff on that because I'm so passionate about contribution.
We have one more episode. So,
so we could.
Yes, we could.
Oh, that's right. Sorry,
Plot
guys.
twist.
Sorry, everybody.
You thought this was the end, and it's not.
So we do have one more, but just briefly, like a part of having a positive, development is contribution. So what are you giving back? And like this whole thing is like helping us to discern, like what is our purpose, what brings us joy, and how do we max out or dream of maxing out all these different dimensions. And ways that we do that is when we give back. Think about, for our listeners, like think about times where you have done something kind for someone, or you've given, or you've cleaned trash, or whatever it might be, and how you felt inside. That is that environmental, like I did something to give back, So I like to think about in kind of the home scenario, like what you're talking about, is I like to, if there's trash around my apartment complex, it's like I take pride in my place. This is where I'm dwelling. This is where I'm living. This is my environmental space. So what can I give back to make it better? If it isn't that great, do things, and that produces that feeling in that space of like, okay, I feel good and I feel safe here.
I think on the other side of that, what's important is how can we, like what you said, contribute to making this space or making the wellness happen,
right.
But also on the flip side of that, how can we maintain that?
Yes.
And that's the important. It's the upkeep and like making sure that it can continually happening. And if it slips, who can I rely on to kind of help bring that back up?
Mm-hmm. And community is key.
Community is key.
Well, even just there's something that's popped in my brain right now. It's like even applying this. So say you've just all heard these dimensions. We still got one more, but you've heard these. What if you took a bird's eye view and you assessed the wellness of your neighborhood, or you assessed the wellness of your community, or the wellness of the culture in your work, right? You can look at all these things and assess where you're at and what goals maybe need to be dialed in on, how to even think about making those goals. So it's like wellness is an overall beautiful, what am I trying to say, like a web that keeps us connected. And then internally, it's like keeping you connected.
Yeah.
I think in one of the last trainings that we did, somebody had applied this or had suggested applying this to their relationship. And I was like, whoa, that's a game changer.
Yeah,
okay.
That's going to be a conversation later.
I mean, that's a beautiful idea though, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, our last one is occupational wellness, being how are we feeling at work? Are we feeling fulfilled there? Are we feeling like we're being heard? Our needs are met? Maybe there's room for growth if that's what we're seeking there. And again, this kind of comes back to like what I said earlier, is that this really is all dependent on what that means to you.
Right.
So what it means for me to be occupationally well might mean that I want to be moving up higher and higher and higher, et cetera. Maybe some people are like, I'm okay with wherever I'm at. This is exactly where I want to be, and that's fine. Yeah. So figuring out what that means for you.
100%. Like I have a friend who shares a lot about their work. And to me, when I'm listening, it sounds like, they hate it and they're frustrated. But to them, they're occupationally well because what matters to them specifically is the money. Like, and they'll go through whatever they need to go through to obtain that specific amount of money. And and I ask him all the time, I'm like, are you sure though? Because it sounds like, and they're like, no, like I'm extremely happy. This is what I'm wanting to do. And this is how much money I'm wanting to make my goals happen. And so it's like, okay, got to check myself not to assert like anything onto them, because it's like, if you're enjoying it, then that's good.
I think it's also important to, it's similar to me because I understand that aspect is sometimes that you have to make sacrifices and take away from one of the aspects of wellness in order to benefit something else. So while occupational, they sound like they're making the sacrifice of, I hate this job right now, but I'm getting that bag. So my financial wellness needs to go up so I can feel secure.
Exactly.
So this is just what I have to do for that. But there's also like sometimes at work, there could be I also know a lot of people who don't like going to work. I get it. They don't like their job, but their money is great.
Yeah.
So if they can put that aside and just be like, okay, I'm working till the weekend, while that may not be satisfying or give you a lot of gratitude in that, it allows you to look forward to something.
Agreed. And I also think too, the same way that we've done with intellectual, occupational can also look like, kind of tying back to the contribution, are there ways that my occupation or, can be where I am self-efficient, right? So maybe working towards that kind of goal. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be like, oh, you're in this like, Fortune 500 company or whatever. For example, like we work at Youthera, and it's like, I find this job to be extremely rewarding, something where I feel like I'm contributing back to my society and doing well and growing, right? I think for me personally, occupational will be high as long as I feel like I'm growing, as long as I feel like I have a opportunity to keep on learning something.
I have a handy little resource that I'm happy to share in the Discord.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest parts of examining our wellness and moving towards greater wellness is to check in and see how this connects with our value system.
Yes.
Because, like occupational wellness, like if I value feeling like I am contributing in my day-to-day job, then that's going to drive the work that I do, right? And so I won't be satisfied. I won't have high occupational wellness if I'm in a job where I'm not contributing in a meaningful way. And so a lot of it does connect back to our values, which is super important. But I'll throw that in our Discord so that y'all can kind of do a breakdown of that. So I think this is a perfect segue into talking about self-care, because if we're going to try to achieve wellness, we also have to take care of ourselves in this process so that we can get there. So would somebody maybe like to share a little bit about like what self-care is and maybe just some of the, I don't know.
Yeah. the nuances, right?
Yes.
No, I think I love that this is something that we're sharing about. So one thing I definitely want to say to all these peer supports and listeners out there is self-care, okay, it is a required piece for us to be able to do our work effectively and properly.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
I know, say it louder. It's literally, it's like it's a part of it's in the training, it's in the materials, because it is a part of what you must do. So that's why we want to talk about it with you today. So self-care or self-love, the words are there, but it's intentional. It's intentional, thoughtful self-attention, self-love. So I have here, it's actions an individual will take to reach optimal physical and mental health and well-being. But again, in my words, it's like I'm giving a commitment to myself that I know these areas of wellness are important. I know that me being successful is important, and it's giving yourself an intentional look and love and care.
I think that intentionality is so important because, for instance, video games can be one of my coping mechanisms because it helps me like distract and like just decompress a little bit. But if I start using that for every time that I'm like stressed, I'm not actually like moving through that with a lot of intention.
Right.
I'm just kind of putting off my healing with that.
You're going through the motions
That's
now.
facts, though.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
facts, though.
So,
And that's okay, too.
yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So yes, intentionality is important.
And I also want to say, on top of self-care, it is your sense of like you said, you want to be your optimal self, and there's going to be a lot of being comfortable with being uncomfortable in that, because you're trying a lot of new things to make yourself be optimal. And with being uncomfortable goes like introduces boundaries. Hello.
Right.
So there's going to be things where you're going to put up a lot of walls, and those walls, I will say for y'all, need to be respected. Right? Boundaries are self-care, and I will shout that to the rooftop. People need to respect your boundaries and recognize that, hey, I'm here to help you, not force you do anything you don't want to do.
Yeah.
I've heard of boundaries being explained as like not something that you're necessarily telling somebody else what they can and cannot do, but it's something about what you're willing to accept or not accept or do. And so it's more so like rules and regulations about how you'll interact in a situation, and that person will hopefully either agree to that or not. And then that's where you have like a further conversation from it. But boundaries are about kind of like creating doors for somebody rather than like giving them the whole house. You offer a room.
I love that, yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah. That's a great way to put that. I'm actually going to write that down.
I know, there's so much that even we're learning from each other. Yeah, I feel like when it comes to self-love, self-care, alongside with the boundaries, I think a lot of questions that we've gotten in the past around this is like, yeah, but how? And that's why it's so important to tie this conversation together with wellness and self-love, self-care, and boundaries. You can ask yourself how when you begin to look. Personally, when you think about your own physical wellness, for example, when that's optimal and when it isn't. And you can begin to ask yourself, well, what are things that what brings me joy? And you'll find that at first, like, for example, being outside brings me joy. But I had to learn this past summer, actually. This is so interesting. So I have had a continual challenge / battle with my own self-view and how I look at my body and how I feel in it. And this summer past, I told myself, like, I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to kayak, I'm going to camp, I'm going to hike, and etc. And I realized that the reason why I was never ever meeting like the physical optimacy was because I hate running. I hate going to the gym. That was never something that was going to work for me.
Running sucks.
But it took me actually going outside and trying things that I was hella scared to try to figure out, like, this is when I felt off, like literally floating down a river, going through a little bit of rapids. That is when I felt the best. And that's when I felt like literally, if I could say maxed out, like happy.
Nice.
So it's like, that is kind of just an example or a model of like when someone says, well, how do I care about myself? Well, begin to just look at your areas and ask yourself questions and then take chances, do stuff.
Going through these 8 dimensions of wellness, rated on a scale of 1 to 10 on how you think you yourself are in each of these domains. And then if you want to try to increase a number, you can try it solo dolo, totally fine. Or you can rely on the supports around you to kind of try this together. Maybe some of your friends can do this as well. And if they're rated higher, tell me what you do so I can learn from you and kind of experience what you experience or try to replicate that in my own way.
100, yeah.
And I want to say, when you're trying these things, like for the first time, you're trying to figure out what's going to, fill your cup and help you. Don't be afraid to try things twice.
My life motto is I try anything twice. Because the first time, if it sucks, it could be a one-off.
It could, right? It could, totally. Yeah. Another thing with self-care too is that it also doesn't have to take like a whole hour. Like you can do things for self-care that are like 5 minutes. It could be, when you're brushing your teeth, just some things that you're saying you're grateful for in your day. You can pair things. If you're squashed for time, there's ways to find a way to put it all in there together.
In our bathroom, we have a dry erase marker that hangs on it, and anyone who comes in the house, they sign their name on the window if they'd like, and then they write something that they enjoyed about the house.
Aww.
Gosh, I need to go live with y'all. It just sounds like a really productive home. Another thing I really wanted to bring into this convo is the love languages and our self-love languages. Because I really want our listeners to kind of have things to go back and either come to our Discord and learn some more, or maybe just Google and do some research, because this self-love is just so important. So we have some self-love languages. You've probably heard of these, but it's physical touch, acts of service, receiving gifts, words of affirmation, and quality time. So I guess to kind of put a little icing on the cake, if you will, why don't we share how we give ourselves love in our particular love language that we prefer? So 100,000 bajillion %, I'm a words of affirmation person. I've just realized words are just the way for me. So for me, I have to like literally hear it's almost like chanting. I have to be in the car, and especially when intrusive thoughts come in. So for example, when we're going to do events like Uplift or a speaking event, and right before it hits and it's like, oh God, I suck. There's just no way. Like I'm not as smart as like 90% of the people in the room, right? All those thoughts flood. I have to like literally chant, you are strong. You're smart. You're beautiful. You're going to kill this. And like I have to keep saying it, and I say it out loud. And because I keep hearing it, it's like, okay, I can do this, and I believe it. And it's like I start to receive it,
Say it until you believe it. I love it.
Yeah. What about y'all?
Okay, so my top ones are physical touch and quality time. And so for me, part of the physical touch is actually my grooming routine.
I love that.
So like shaving the sides of my head, grooming my beard, showering, the whole thing. Like for whatever reason, it's like, all right, I'm giving this time to myself. And like my brain like does that cool thing where it just stops thinking and it's in the moment. You get in the zone.
I love that.
And then for quality time, something that I learned during the pandemic was how important it was to be alone and to be by myself. And so I went on some solo camping trips, and that's something that I still really enjoy doing. It's just going on day trips by myself, just filling my cup and doing what makes me happy, making all the choices that I want to make.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. For me, personally, for my self-love, I give myself gifts, whether that be like food. Big food guy. I'll just buy myself food and be like, yeah, this is so worth it. And then quality time, which I just now realized that was a thing when you were giving your explanation, Mordecai. And I do that when I drive, because my brain just shuts off, and then I can have like conversations with myself. Also, dishes, weirdly. I love doing the dishes, and it's just like, I can see things and I can be by myself, but I can see the progress of, if things seem hard, there's a lot of dishes here. I can see the progress of them being dirty to clean. And then I have that sense of like accomplishment in a way. And that's the reward that I got. But in the time of doing that, I have this time with myself where I can feel accomplished, and that quality time with myself where it's like, yeah, we did it in the sense of just me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Beautiful. So, I mean, we talked about every one of those dimensions of wellness. We talked a little bit about the balance of that, how one, that's not really achievable because we're human and we can do the best that we can.
If you do, though, good on you.
Yeah, right. Hit us up, please. We talked about, oh my gosh, so much with this, but the intentionality of self-care, how important it is that we make the time and space for it because we have to take care of ourselves first. That's so important. And a little bit about the self-love languages. And I would love to have more conversation with folks on our Discord about all of this because I know there's so much more we can get into.
Exactly. That's one thing, y'all, that we're super excited about with this whole podcast series. You know, today's episode 5. We've got one episode remaining to film, but we're just really wanting to create a community where we can have more discussion on this. You know, these podcasts have been awesome for us to touch on things, but afterwards we're always like, man, I could have gone forever on just this and just that. So in our Discord, you'll be able to have a little bit more discussion, you know, in our channel discussions on there. So that'd be great.
Yeah, please share your perspective. Like we said today, we love to learn, and I love to get out of the scope of the vision that I have. So please share everything that you got with me.
Help us increase our intellectual wellness.
Yes, exactly.
Our intentional intellectual wellness.
Very good. So just a quick shout out then for our socials. Instagram, it's at the Youth Era. TikTok, it is just Youth Era. And then YouTube, where hopefully you're listening to this and watching, is the Youth Era as well. So we're looking forward. On Discord, if you already have it, then you're going to click the add friend. You're just going to search for YE Connect, and we'll get you connected to the YSS Connection Zone.
Cool. And with that, we'll see you next time.
Thank y'all for listening.
Take care.
Bye.